The coffee in my thermos had gone cold hours ago, but I kept sipping it anyway, more from habit than need. My nursing scrubs still smelled faintly of antiseptic and exhaustion from the double shift I'd just finished at Memorial Hospital. The dashboard clock glowed too, 47 a.m. as I navigated the empty highway, my headlights cutting through the thick fog that had rolled in from the bay. I just wanted to get home, peel off these clothes, and collapse into bed before my alarm went off in 4 hours for another shift. That's when I saw the red glow ahead. Tail lights at an odd angle, too low, wrong somehow. My foot eased off the accelerator as my nurse instincts kicked in, overriding my desperate need for sleep. As I got closer, my stomach dropped. A black Mercedes sedan was crumpled against the concrete barrier, its front end accordioned from impact. Steam hissed from the destroyed engine, and the driver's side door hung open at an unnatural angle. No other cars in sight. No flashing emergency lights yet. Just me, and whatever horror waited inside that wreck. I pulled onto the shoulder, hazards on, and grabbed my phone. My hands were already dialing 911 as I approached the vehicle, my worn sneakers crunching on shattered glass and twisted metal scattered across the asphalt. The smell hit me first, gasoline and something metallic, blood, sharp in the damp night air. I'd seen enough trauma in the ER to know what fresh blood smelled like, and there was a lot of it. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's calm voice felt surreal against the scene before me. Single vehicle accident on Highway 17, northbound, about 2 miles past the Riverside exit. One victim, male, appears to be unconscious. Heavy front-end damage. I'm a registered nurse. I'm going to assess him now. I ended the call and pocketed my phone, approaching the driver's side. The man slumped over the steering wheel was in his mid-40s, wearing an expensive suit now soaked with blood from a deep gash across his forehead. His breathing was shallow and rapid. Possible head trauma, definitely going into shock. But what made my blood run cold wasn't his injuries. It was his right hand, still gripping a leather briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. The briefcase itself was dented but intact, and through the shattered windshield, I could see bullet holes stitched across the hood. This wasn't an accident. This was something else entirely. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to get back in my car and wait for the ambulance. But the nurse in me couldn't walk away from someone bleeding out. I checked his pulse, weak and thready, then carefully tilted his head back to clear his airway. His eyes flickered open for just a moment, unfocused and glazed with pain. He tried to speak, his lips moving soundlessly at first, then barely audible over the hiss of the ruined engine. Not safe. They're coming back. You need to leave, now. Help is on the way, I said, pressing my cardigan against the head wound to slow the bleeding. Just stay with me. What's your name? His hand shot out with surprising strength, gripping my wrist. His eyes suddenly focused, locked onto mine with an intensity that made me freeze. Listen to me. Take the case. Code is 4729. Get it to the federal building downtown. Ask for Agent Morrison. No one else. Trust no one else. They'll kill you for it. You're confused. You've hit your head. Just stay calm and... Mia. The name stopped me cold. My name. How did he know my name? They know who you are now. I'm sorry, so sorry. I didn't want this. Take it. Please, Morrison, only Morrison. Before I could process what was happening, he fumbled with his other hand, producing a small key from his jacket pocket. With shaking fingers, he unlocked the handcuff, and the briefcase fell into my lap, heavier than it looked. In the distance, I heard sirens approaching, that welcome wail of emergency services. But I also heard something else that made my stomach clench, the low rumble of multiple engines approaching fast from the opposite direction. The man's grip on my wrist tightened painfully. Go, now. They can't find you with it, please. You're their only hope. 3 sets of headlights appeared through the fog, moving fast. Too fast. Not emergency vehicles. The man's eyes widened in terror, and that fear was contagious. I made a decision I still can't fully explain. Maybe it was the desperation in his voice, maybe it was the bullet holes that proved this wasn't paranoid rambling, or maybe I was just too exhausted to think straight. I grabbed the briefcase and ran. I sprinted back to my car, threw the case into the passenger seat, and pulled back onto the highway just as those headlights grew closer. In my rearview mirror, I watched 3 black SUVs screech to a halt at the accident scene. Men in dark suits emerged, moving with military precision. One of them spotted my taillights disappearing into the fog. He pointed, shouted something I couldn't hear, and 2 of the vehicles immediately pursued. My Honda Civic wasn't built for high-speed chases. The engine whined in protest as I pushed it to 80, then 90, weaving through the sparse pre-dawn traffic. The SUVs gained on me effortlessly, their headlights growing larger in my mirror with each passing second. My heart hammered against my ribcage so hard I thought it might crack through. The steering wheel was slick with sweat under my palms. Every instinct screamed at me that this was insane, that I should pull over and explain it was all a misunderstanding, that I was just trying to help. But the bullet holes in that Mercedes told a different story. Whatever I'd stumbled into, explanations wouldn't save me now. The highway stretched ahead, nearly empty in these pre-dawn hours. A semi-truck appeared in the distance, and I calculated angles and distances like I was back in anatomy class, trying to figure out if I could use it as cover. The SUVs were relentless, closing the gap between us with terrifying speed. One pulled alongside me in the left lane, the tinted window rolling down. I couldn't look, just focused on the road ahead and pressed the accelerator harder, coaxing every bit of speed from my aging sedan. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, the vibration loud in the tense silence. Unknown number. I ignored it. The buzzing stopped, then immediately started again. And again. Each time I declined, it would call back within seconds, like whoever was on the other end knew I had no choice but to eventually answer. The persistence was psychological warfare, wearing me down. On the 7th call, I snatched it up and hit speaker, keeping both hands on the wheel. What? My voice came out sharper than intended, fear masquerading as anger. Pull over, Miss Chen. The voice was male, cold and professional, like he was requesting I sign a routine form rather than surrender my life. You have something that doesn't belong to you. This doesn't need to end badly. We just want the briefcase. Pull over, hand it over, and you can go home. Simple. The casual use of my name made my stomach drop. How did they know who I was? I'd only stopped to help 30 minutes ago. I don't know what you're talking about. My voice shook despite my attempt at confidence, betraying the terror flooding through me. Please don't insult my intelligence, Miss Chen. We watched you take it from Connor Blake at the accident scene. Security footage is quite clear. He paused, letting that sink in. Security footage from where? The highway. We know you're a nurse at Memorial Hospital, 3rd floor trauma unit. You've worked there for 3 years. We know you live at 2847 Pinewood Apartments. Unit 12D moved in last September when the rent at your previous place became unaffordable. We know you have a younger sister, Amy, freshman at State College, majoring in biology. She has Professor Martinez for chemistry on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. Sits in the 3rd row, usually next to a boy named Derek who's been working up the courage to ask her out. Each detail he recited felt like a physical blow. The specificity was deliberate, designed to show me how thoroughly they knew every aspect of my life, how vulnerable I was, how vulnerable Amy was. My hands tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles went white, bones pressing against skin. Leave my sister out of this. Then pull over. Last chance before this gets unpleasant. The threat hung in the air, unspoken details, somehow worse than any explicit description of what unpleasant might mean. You're a smart woman, Mia. You worked hard to get where you are. Scholarships, student loans you're still paying off, double shifts to cover rent. Don't throw it all away for something that doesn't concern you. Connor Blake made his choices. Don't let them become yours. I hung up, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. The casual intimacy of his knowledge about my life, about Amy's life, made me want to scream. I immediately dialed 911, but before the first ring could complete, my phone went dead. Not just the call ended, the entire phone. The screen went black and wouldn't respond to any buttons, no matter how frantically I pressed them. They'd shut it down remotely somehow, cut off my only lifeline to help. I was alone on this dark highway with killers hunting me, and no way to call for backup. An exit appeared through the fog, its green sign barely visible in the murky pre-dawn gloom. I didn't think, just reacted, yanking the wheel hard to the right at the last possible second. Tires squealed in protest as the Civic careened across 2 lanes. The car behind me blared its horn as I cut it off, but I barely registered it. The off-ramp curved sharply, and I took it too fast, feeling the right side tires lift slightly before gravity slammed them back down. The SUVs followed, but the sharp turn bought me a few precious seconds, as their heavier vehicles had to slow more dramatically to navigate the curve. I killed my headlights the moment I hit the bottom of the ramp, plunging into darkness. It was reckless, dangerous, but the fog provided just enough ambient light from distant street lamps that I could make out the road. I turned into a residential neighborhood, taking random turns, left then right then left again, trying to lose them in the maze of quiet suburban streets. Behind me, I could hear their engines, sometimes close enough that I held my breath, sometimes distant, like predators circling wounded prey, patient and confident in their eventual victory. The houses around me were dark, families sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the chase happening on their quiet streets. I wanted to pound on doors, scream for help, but I couldn't risk leading these people to innocent homes. Besides, what would I even say? Men are chasing me because I took a briefcase from a dying man on the highway. It sounded insane even in my own head. I finally pulled into an all-night gas station, its fluorescent lights harsh after the darkness. I parked at the darkest pump in the back corner, trying to catch my breath and think. My lungs burned from the adrenaline and fear, each breath sharp and painful. The briefcase sat on my passenger seat, innocent and deadly in equal measure. What could possibly be inside that was worth this? Worth threatening my sister? Worth Connor Blake dying on that foggy highway? The man, Connor Blake apparently, had given me a code with his dying breath. 4729. My hands trembled as I examined the case more closely. It was high-grade leather, probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, with a sophisticated electronic locking mechanism that looked military-grade. I entered the code, half expecting an alarm or some security measure to go off. Instead, the locks clicked open with a soft mechanical whisper. Inside were stacks of documents, USB drives and photographs, all meticulously organized in folders. I didn't have time to examine everything, not with them hunting me, but what I saw in those first few seconds made my blood run cold. Photos of men in expensive suits shaking hands with known crime bosses I'd seen on the news. Bank statements showing millions moving through offshore accounts, the kind of numbers that didn't make sense for any legitimate business. Emails discussing shipments and payoffs, written in careful language that couldn't quite hide their meaning. Names I recognized, politicians and business leaders and law enforcement officials, all connected by red lines in what looked like an organizational chart of corruption. This wasn't just evidence. This was a nuclear bomb that could bring down dozens of powerful people, maybe hundreds when all the connections were traced. Connor Blake hadn't been in an accident. He'd been assassinated for what was in this case, and now I was the one holding it. My phone suddenly flickered back to life, the screen glowing in the dim interior of my car. I hadn't done anything to fix it. They'd turned it back on remotely, the same way they'd shut it off. The realization of how much control they had over my digital life made my skin crawl. Immediately, it was flooded with messages and missed calls, the notifications piling up so fast I couldn't read them all from unknown numbers. All with the same basic message, variations on a theme. Threats, promises, pleas to return what I'd taken. We can make this go away. Think about your future. Your sister doesn't need to know any of this happened. Last warning. Be smart, Mia. Then one message made me freeze, made the world narrow to just that small screen and the horror displayed on it. A photo of Amy walking across her college campus, taken earlier that day based on the sunshine streaming through the trees and her outfit, the yellow sweater I'd bought her for her birthday last month. She was smiling, talking on her phone. Probably to me during one of our daily check-ins. Her dark hair caught the sunlight, and she looked so young, so innocent, completely unaware that someone had been following her close enough to take this picture. The photographer had been maybe 20 feet away, close enough to reach out and grab her if they wanted. The message below it was simple, almost casual in its cruelty. She's pretty. It would be a shame if something happened to her. I was going to be sick. The gas station spun around me, and I fumbled with the door handle, stumbling out of the car. I barely made it to the trash can by the pump before my stomach emptied itself, the cold coffee and granola bar I'd eaten hours ago coming back up. I heaved until there was nothing left, tears streaming down my face, mixing with the cold sweat on my skin. When I straightened up, wiping my mouth with a shaking hand, trying to steady myself against the pump, I saw it. A black SUV parked at the gas station across the street, facing my direction, just sitting there, engine running, exhaust visible in the cold morning air. The windows were too dark to see inside, but I could feel eyes on me, watching, waiting. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. The message was clear: we know where you are, we've always known, and you can't escape. The question wasn't if they would catch me, but when, and what I would choose to do before that moment arrived. I got back in my car, briefcase clutched to my chest, and tried to think. The federal building. Connor had said to get it to Agent Morrison at the federal building. It was 20 miles back into the city, through downtown, exposed and dangerous. But what choice did I have? Going home meant leading them straight to my apartment. Going to the police might mean handing it to the very people these documents incriminated. I had to trust Connor's dying words. I pulled out of the gas station. The SUV followed. 2 more appeared from side streets, flanking me. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. They wanted me to know I was trapped, that running was pointless. My hands shook on the steering wheel as I merged back onto the highway, headed toward downtown. The city's skyline appeared on the horizon as dawn began to break, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that felt obscene given my situation. Traffic picked up as early commuters hit the roads. The SUVs maintained their distance now, boxed in by civilian vehicles. They couldn't do anything too obvious in broad daylight. Small mercies. My exhausted brain clung to that hope as I navigated toward the federal building in the government district. I was 10 blocks away when my car started making a terrible grinding noise. The engine temperature gauge spiked into the red. Steam began pouring from under the hood. They'd done something to my car back at the gas station, sabotaged it somehow while I was being sick. The engine seized completely, and I coasted to a stop in the middle of downtown traffic during morning rush hour. The black SUVs immediately converged, pulling alongside me. Car doors opened. Men in suits emerged, moving toward me with purpose. I grabbed the briefcase and ran, pushing through crowds of confused morning commuters. Behind me, I heard shouting, footsteps pounding pavement. "Stop her, she's got my wife's medication." One of them yelled, trying to get bystanders to intervene. Smart, make me look like the criminal. The federal building loomed ahead, 8 blocks. I could see it. Security barriers, armed guards, safety, I just had to reach it. My nursing shoes weren't meant for running. My lungs burned. My legs screamed. But I kept going, clutching that damned briefcase like my life depended on it. Because it did. Amy's life depended on it. 6 blocks. A hand grabbed my scrub top from behind. I twisted away, fabric tearing. An older woman gasped as I nearly knocked her over. I shouted an apology over my shoulder and kept running. 4 blocks. They were gaining. I could hear their breathing, their footsteps right behind me. The morning crowd seemed to part for them while blocking me at every turn. I dodged between a bus and a taxi, nearly getting clipped by a delivery truck. 2 blocks. The federal building's plaza opened up before me. Security guards visible at the entrance. Almost there. A hand locked onto my arm, yanking me backward with brutal force. I hit the pavement hard, the briefcase skittering across the concrete. One of the suited men lunged for it. "Federal agent, everybody down!" The voice was female, commanding, and accompanied by the distinct sound of multiple safeties clicking off. I looked up through dazed eyes to see a woman in a Navy suit and FBI credentials, flanked by half a dozen armed agents, their weapons trained on the men in suits who'd been chasing me. The men froze, hands slowly rising. The woman, late 30s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, approached me and helped me to my feet. "Are you Mia Chen?" I nodded, too winded to speak. "I'm Special Agent Morrison. Connor Blake was my partner. He told me if anything happened to him, a nurse would bring me something very important." She looked at the briefcase, then back at me. "You did good. You did real good. Let's get you somewhere safe." That was 6 months ago. I'm writing this from a secured location while the trials continue. The briefcase contained evidence of corruption that reached into federal agencies, local police departments, and criminal organizations across 3 states. Connor Blake had been deep undercover for 2 years, gathering everything needed to bring them all down. He'd been made that night, ambushed on his way to meet Agent Morrison. In his final moments, facing certain death, he'd gambled everything on a random stranger showing enough humanity to stop and help. He'd chosen well, according to Morrison, but Connor had also paid the ultimate price. He died at the scene while I was running for my life. The men who'd chased me are now in custody, facing charges that will put them away for decades. The corrupt officials whose names were in those documents are in prison or awaiting trial. Amy is safe, relocated with a new identity until the trials conclude. My nursing license was suspended when I couldn't show up for my shifts without explanation, but Morrison assures me it'll be reinstated once I can safely resume my life. Some nights I still dream about that foggy highway, the smell of blood and gasoline mixing with the metallic tang of fear, the weight of that briefcase in my lap like an anchor pulling me into depths I never wanted to explore. The dreams are vivid, more memory than imagination. I wake up gasping, my sheets soaked with sweat, convinced I can still hear the hiss of that destroyed engine, still see Connor Blake's desperate eyes as he pressed that key into my trembling hands. In those moments between sleep and waking, I'm back in my Honda Civic, watching those black SUVs appear through the fog like something out of a nightmare, except nightmares end when you open your eyes. I think about how mundane it all started, how I just wanted to go home and sleep, how my biggest concern that night was whether I'd remembered to set my coffee maker for the morning, whether I'd have enough energy to make it through another double shift. I think about the thousands of times I've driven that same stretch of highway, probably passed dozens of accidents, relied on other first responders to handle them while I kept driving. But that one night, something made me stop. Maybe it was the fog making visibility so poor that I saw the wreck before I could rationalize past it. Maybe it was the nurse in me overriding the exhausted human who just wanted her bed. Maybe it was fate, though I've never been one to believe in such things. One moment of basic human decency, of doing what my nurse's oath demanded, pulled me into a world I never knew existed. A world where briefcases are handcuffed to wrists, where corruption runs so deep it takes years of undercover work to map its full extent, where doing the right thing means becoming a target. Before that night, my biggest ethical dilemma was whether to call out a doctor's questionable prescription. Now I know what it's like to hold evidence that could topple senators, to have killers know my address, to see my sister's photo accompanied by thinly veiled death threats. Protective custody facility where I've been staying is nice enough, if you can ignore the armed guards, and the fact that I can't leave without an escort. It's a converted apartment building in a location I'm not allowed to disclose, with reinforced doors and windows that don't open. My room is functional but sterile, like a slightly upscale hospital room. Ironic, given my profession. I have books, a television with limited channels, and weekly sessions with a therapist who specializes in witness trauma. What I don't have is my life. My apartment is being watched, so I can't go home. My job is on hold, my patients wondering where their regular nurse disappeared to. My friends think I had a family emergency and had to leave town suddenly. Only Amy knows the truth, and that knowledge has changed her. When we video chat, supervised and encrypted, I can see the fear lingering behind her eyes, the way she glances over her shoulder even in her dorm room. She's taking a semester off, staying with our aunt in Oregon under an assumed name until the trials conclude. She tells me she understands, that she's proud of me, but I can hear the unspoken question. Was it worth it? Was stopping to help one man worth upending both our lives? Connor's sister visited me last week in protective custody. Her name is Rachel, and she looks nothing like her brother except for the eyes, that same intensity that had locked onto me in Connor's final moments. She's a high school teacher in Pennsylvania, married with 2 kids she showed me pictures of, a normal life that was shattered when federal agents appeared at her door to tell her Connor was dead. She'd known her brother worked for the FBI, but not about the deep cover assignment, not about the years he'd spent building a case that would become his legacy and his death sentence. She thanked me through tears for giving her brother's death meaning, for making sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. We sat in the facility's visiting room, a pleasant enough space that couldn't quite hide its institutional nature, and she held my hands while she cried. She told me about Connor as a kid, how he'd always been the one to stand up to bullies, how he'd become a cop because he genuinely believed in protecting people, how he'd been so excited when the FBI recruited him for the Organized Crime Task Force. She told me he'd known the risks, had updated his will and written goodbye letters before going undercover, but that knowing the risks didn't make losing him any easier. Then she gave me a letter he'd written to be delivered if he didn't survive, sealed in an envelope with simple instructions. To whoever helps me when the time comes. Her hands shook as she handed it to me, and I noticed we were both trembling, connected by this man we'd both loved in different ways, both lost to the same cause. I waited until she left to open it, needing privacy for whatever message waited inside. The letter was handwritten, Connor's penmanship precise and careful, like he'd taken time with each word. It was dated 3 weeks before the night I found him, like he'd known his time was running out. "I don't know who you are," the letter read, "but if you're reading this, it means you stopped. In a world where most people would drive past, where getting involved is dangerous and inconvenient, you stopped. You saw someone who needed help and you didn't turn away. That alone tells me everything I need to know about your character." The letter continued, and I read it 3 times, memorizing each word. "Thank you for your courage. Thank you for caring about a dying stranger. Thank you for seeing a man who needed help before you saw the danger. The world needs more people like you, people who act on instinct to help rather than instinct to protect themselves. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from what comes next. I'm sorry my choices became your burden. But please know this. By doing what you're about to do, by getting this evidence to the right people, you're saving hundreds of lives." He wrote about the victims, the people destroyed by the corruption he'd documented, the small business owners bankrupted by protection rackets, the witnesses who disappeared before they could testify, the communities poisoned by illegal dumping, the children orphaned by gang violence that police were paid to ignore. "Each document in that briefcase represents someone who deserves justice," he wrote. "You're their voice now. You're their hope." The letter ended with instructions to trust Agent Morrison and no one else, with reassurances that I was doing the right thing even when it felt impossible, and with a final message that I've carried with me every day since. Be brave. You already showed you have it in you by stopping to help. That same courage will get you through this. And know that you're a hero, even if no one can ever publicly know your name. I know it. Rachel knows it. And everyone whose life you're saving by doing this will know it, even if they never learn who you are. Thank you for being the person I hoped would find me. Thank you for proving that good people still exist. I keep that letter folded in my pocket now, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. That sometimes stopping to help, even when every instinct screams to drive away, is exactly what the moment requires. Connor Blake bet his life on the kindness of strangers, and somehow, impossibly, that bet paid off. "I don't know who you are," the letter read, "but thank you for your courage. Thank you for caring about a dying stranger. Thank you for seeing a man who needed help before you saw the danger. The world needs more people like you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from what comes next. Be brave, trust Morrison, and know that you're saving hundreds of lives by doing this. You're a hero, even if no one can ever publicly know your name." I keep that letter folded in my pocket, a reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can change everything. That sometimes stopping to help, even when every instinct screams to drive away, is exactly what the moment requires. My name is Mia Chen. I'm a nurse, and I saved a dying man who'd already saved me by trusting me with the most important delivery of my life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more love stories. Your thoughts mean the world to me. Tell me in the comments what you felt and what kind of story you want to hear next. Until next time, never stop believing in unexpected love.